Traditional, isn't it? Someone emerging from the side, dressed in choir dress to preach. But it's an issue of chronology today. But the psalm we have been given today, chosen as a response to the first reading, hence its name, responsorial psalm. That's why it's called that. Psalm 138 is giving thanks for the joy of being in God's presence, taking its cue from Isaiah's vision of the heavenly court. Isaiah's vision places him in God's presence. Nevertheless, the joy of the psalm is here tempered by fear, because Isaiah, naturally, feels his sinfulness before the thrice holiness of God. And as often in the Old Testament, he is deathly afraid now that he, a mortal, has seen God. I'm reminded of the soul in Newman's Dream of Gerontius, who at dying faces without mediation the blinding light of God's being and screams, "Take me away." In Gerontius's case, he is taken to the joyful cleansing of purgatory. But being taken far from God is a less redemptive experience for us, mourning and weeping in this vale of tears. And as we might expect, the Psalms also express this alienation. A common image in the Psalms to express despair and anguish is to be sunk in the sea. Psalm 69 is particularly eloquent. "Save me, O God, for the waters have risen to my neck. I have sunk into the mud of the deep, and there is no foothold. I have entered the waters of the deep, and the waves overwhelm me." Quite a contrast to the misplaced confidence of Psalm 138. And Psalm 69 continues to reiterate its plea for salvation. "Save me from the waters of the deep, lest the waves overwhelm me. Do not let the deep engulf me, nor death close its mouth on me." Israel was not much of a seagoing people. The comedy of Jonah, for example, is in part that an Israelite takes refuge on the sea among foreign seafaring peoples and causes a storm. For Israel, the sea represents chaos and destruction, the home of evil monsters like Leviathan or Rahab. And not only the sea, even large inland bodies of water like the Lake Gennesaret, the Sea of Galilee in other Gospels, carried a threat for boats who ventured too far into the center of its 2.5 by 7 mile expanse. Quite a lake. Remember the ferocity of the storm that Jesus calms on this lake, and another storm through which Jesus walks on the water towards the boat, tiny and helpless on the violent waves of Galilee's sea. So why does Jesus tell Peter to put out into the deep? Peter's confusion may arise from more than this. They are heading into the depths, but the best place to make a catch is to put out a little from the land. This is where Jesus teaches the people. But even more frustrating is that the best time to fish is in the night. As Peter tries to explain, "Master, we toiled all night." This is because, as I'm sure you've been told, Fish don't like the sunlight, so in the day they hide in the depths. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. If you, O Lord, should mark our guilt, Lord, who would survive? Psalm 130, praying for salvation, as we do daily for our departed brothers and sisters. But John's Gospel explains why we choose these depths as a refuge. The light has come into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. Often we hide in our sadness. We take refuge in the familiar comfort of sin, because the risk of exposing ourselves to trusting in salvation would be too much to tolerate if it isn't true. It is like the fish brought up into the light, brought from a dark but safe environment into an onerous, unbearable one because we've been caught in a duplicitous net. So we shrink from the light and hide, where we can't see our failure, where we can't be fooled, in the deep. And yet, the nets were breaking when they hauled in that catch. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he was astonished, and all that were with him, at the catch of fish which they had taken. Jesus comes to fish for those who are in the depths, those who have not been pressing in on him to hear the word of God, but for those whose despair and anguish overwhelms them, and who sinks into the deep, shrinking from salvation because it's just too much of a risk to come up to the surface and be exposed. But you don't need to take this risk if you just cry out to Jesus from the depths, because Jesus will come to you and bring you with him up from the deep and into the daylight, because he is the light. I have come as light into the world, so that everyone who believes in me should not remain in the darkness. For I came not to judge the world, but to save the world. As Karl Barth insisted, against man's no stands God's nevertheless. We should complete the scream of Gerontius' soul before the unbearable glory of God. Take me away, that sooner I may rise and go above and see him in the truth of everlasting day.